Alrighty, here we are working exercise 12-9, entries for issuing and calling bonds with a gain. Alright, so some companies issue bonds that are callable. That means when the bonds get sold, they tell people, hey, if we want to someday in the future, we might call these bonds back, which means they'll pay off the bondholders. And they tend to do this when interest rate drops, right? So this was issued at 10%. And so if interest rates drop a lot, let's say the interest rates drop down to 5%, we don't want to have 10% bonds out there, so you call the old ones and reissue some new ones at 5. Seems like a better strategy, right? So they got these callable bonds out there, and it's just doing some bonds, interest, getting the cash in, but this time we'll be paying some cash out to pay off that liability. Alright, so let's do these transactions. This is exercise 12-9, and of course date, account, debit, and credit. Alright, so the first one is issued the bonds for cash at their face amount. Okay, what was their face amount? 30 million. Alright, so that means we're getting 30 million cash in. Ooh, that's awesome. So on 3/1. Alright, and of course now we have some bonds payable. Alright, so there we did that March transaction. Sold bonds, people gave us cash for them. Next thing, 6 months later, that's when they're due, March 1st and September 1st, we pay the interest. Alright, so that's nothing more than principal times rate times time. 30 million times 10% times half a year. Alright, remember this is an annual rate. Alright, so I'll just calculate this down here. Interest expense equals principal times rate times time. So we've got 30 million times 10% times, we've been doing it in days, right? So 180 divided by 360, that's half a year. But you could just do it times 1/2, right? So, well, we'll just do that, times 0.5. So 10% of 30 million is 3 million. Half of that is 1.5 million. Alright, so that was an easy one to figure out. Alright, so let's pay that interest, right? It's interest expense that we pay in cash on 9/1. Alright, I'll just put that down there. Alright, we did that. What else do we need to do? September 1, called the bond issue at 98, the rate provided in the bond indenture. So the agreement on these bonds, when people bought the bonds, they agreed that the company could buy them back at 98% of the face value, probably somewhere in the future, like maybe 5 years. They probably aren't callable within the first 5 years, but after that at 98%, or maybe it slides and it's got, in 10 years, 97%, it's an agreement, so they can have whatever contract they want. In this case, the contract is we can call the bonds at 98%. So that means they're going to pay off the bondholders, and they're going to not pay them the whole 30 million. They're going to pay them 98% of 30 million. So we need to calculate that. 30 million times 0.98 equals 29,400,000. Alright, 29,400,000. Great. So we're going to do that. So we're going to pay off $30 million worth of bonds using $29,400 worth of cash, but that's still going to leave us hanging. right? Because we got to get rid of that whole liability, right? So we're going to call that a gain, right? So 30 million minus 29,400,000. Of course, we can tell that equals 600, right? So the gain is 600,000. All right, so on 9/1 out in 2020, 9/1/2020, we're paying off those bonds, and it tells us not to worry about the interest. So we'll just go ahead and just pay those off. And so we're reducing the liability bonds payable. All right, we're getting rid of all of them. So getting rid of that whole 30 million, right? And of course it takes cash to do that. And we figured out it's going to cost us 29,400,000, right? 98% of that. And then our gain is the 600. And our debit equals our credits. So we're good. That's exercise 12.9.